Welcome to the latest installation of the Dirt Dude Conversations. My name is Andy Clarke. I'm here with Professor Ian Porter of La Trobe University. Ian is the Professor of Life Sciences dealing with agriculture and the environment, based out of Bundoora in Melbourne. It's quite a good opportunity to have Ian come in and talk. We've actually done quite a bit of work together over the years in the Australian wine industry, collaborating on the Soil Health Project, and also through Ian's work with smoke tainting wine. So welcome Ian.
Thanks, Andy.
What I'd really like to talk to Ian today about is actually methyl bromide in agriculture. So Ian has quite an extensive experience with that as a background in plant pathology. Ian, to start with, can you explain to us why methyl bromide is important in agriculture and the like?
Yeah. So methyl bromide itself was one of the biggest chemicals in agriculture. 60,000 tonnes were used in the controlled countries, the developed countries of the world, and another 10,000 tonnes in the developing countries. This was back until about 1995. And then what happened was, in 1992, under the Montreal Protocol, it was listed as an ozone depleting chemical. Yeah, so it had been used in the late 40s up to the late 1990s as a major agricultural fumigant for soil disinfestation, which got rid of diseases, pathogens, weeds, nematodes, in some cases viruses and bacteria.
So it was pretty effective.
It was incredibly effective. The bad thing about it was that for the globe was that it produced about 30% more yield when you used it than using conventional agricultural techniques without it. And the world grappled with, how do we get rid of this yield increase? How can we match that when that's giving economic growth to some of the biggest industries in the world? So, we're underpinning, or methyl bromide was, major industries, tomato industries in USA, strawberry fruit, ornamental, certification industries, virtually everywhere it was being used.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you've just recently received a major award from the United Nations. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Thanks, Andy. I mean, it's lovely to get these awards, and it's really nice, but it's really about the awards really to acknowledge that science is important in solutions for the globe now. And the Montreal Protocol, the biggest success story of it is that it's all based objectively on science outcomes. So even though the politicians are debating whether this or that will happen, the science objectively tells them what can be done, and the protocol is unique in that. And what's happened is the parties have actually followed that. They don't like our recommendations initially, but ultimately they take those on board. And one of my roles that I got back in the 90s was to become a member of the UN committee. I was selected because of the knowledge I had in soil disinfestation techniques, and they said, come on board and try and help the parties get rid of this product. And it's been incredibly rewarding. The awards were to recognise that commitment over 30 years with the Montreal Protocol and dedication to getting, as a chair of those committees, leading the globes to try and phase out these chemicals.
Great. So as in reducing the use of methyl bromide, you've seen a major reduction in the ozone affecting chemicals. What sort of impact has that had on the ozone layer? And I guess what sort of other alternatives are there to using these chemicals as well?
Yeah, this is really important, because the methyl bromide story, whilst it's not the biggest ozone depleter, the biggest ones were the CFCs in refrigerators, air conditioners. They were massive and they went out very quickly. There are other industrial products, methyl chloroforms and foam agents and metered dose inhaler blowers and extinguishers, etc. And they're important as well. But when you put all those together, they're in the atmosphere for a long time. Methyl bromide is a short-lived halon in the atmosphere, so getting regulation of methyl bromide has the chance to give the biggest effect on the ozone layer. And that's in fact what's happened, and we've been able to demonstrate that mankind polluted the atmosphere through methyl bromide. We've now got rid of it, and it's declined in the atmosphere within a year, and therefore the ozone hole recovery at this stage, 34% of that recovery is just due to the regulation of methyl bromide.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
And so are there alternatives out there? Obviously you're saying that there's a 30% increase in yields to agriculture, so that's obviously very important as an economic driver.
Yeah.
What can replace methyl bromide within these systems?
Yeah, that's been the tough bit because MB is the best. So what the world's now grappling with is the best good enough for our sustainability on the globe, and it isn't. We've got to accept a little less in yields and productivity, not so much economics, because it all balances out so you might make just as much. And getting that message across to the parties took years, and in fact they allowed a little exemption under the protocol just for methyl bromide because it was so complicated. They allowed them critical uses, which said if there are no alternatives, take these critical uses. And you know, we originally faced 150 of these massive nominations, and it nearly killed us, but we got through them. But
what sort of critical uses would?
Well, the critical uses at that time spanned everything. All the things I mentioned, replant for wine industry, orchard replant, certification, tomatoes, peppers, vegetables, flowers, tree crops, the whole lot were using them. They all came in early on. We then looked at all the options, and in fact we did a huge study globally looking at all the international studies saying what's the loss if you go to the next best alternative. And it was about 2%, right? And we said, well, come on guys, is 2% really going to destroy economies over time? And it didn't. And then it's greater for some of them, like strawberry fruit, strawberry runners, really struggling at the moment. We're hoping they'll go as well. So to answer your question about the options initially are chemical fumigants and other products which are safe to the ozone layer.
Yes.
We don't like using them because they're not sustainable, but they're implemented in certain places, phased out in others. Others have gone to controlled production techniques in glass houses, no chemicals needed, or minimal chemicals, or change to softer options, biofumigation, other things.
Yeah, okay. So obviously you've had that pushback from industry, certainly initially. What other examples would you have of resistance to change through industries and the like?
Well, the pushback through industries is purely on an economical and an ease basis. So because we're objective, we're scientists who get our hands dirty, get in the field all the time, we empathise with industry. We work for industries. We don't work for the pollies, really. We're out there to make sure the solutions work. So we're trialling techniques, the international community's trialling them. We review that. Every 4 years we review everything that's done, from green waste organics through to alternative fumigants. And what we're trying to do for the protocol is just objectively say, at this point in time, 95% of those uses could be replaced, or 80% or whatever. And we told them 95 could go, and they accepted that. So the politicians or the regulators or the people representing the countries eventually got used to the fact that, yes, they do work, and they trialled them themselves, and then they were able to replace.
So what would be the number one use of methyl bromide in the current age?
Yep. Now, because all the soil uses have gone and most of the domestic commodity uses, so for pests and insects in houses, we now have quarantine and pre-shipment, which is called QPS, is where we're defending biosecurity issues in countries like Australia, international trade, over 20 billion of international trade, wheat, hay, grains are all going out. They're exempt at the moment from the protocol. So we used to have 60,000 tonnes for soils and domestic use. That's gone, basically. We've now got 10,000 tonnes, which is sort of increasing in certain areas of the world, that's still exempt. It needs to come into the protocol, but there's huge resistance and may never come in.
So you've removed methyl bromide from the system and you've reduced ozone depleting gases. Have you seen any benefit on soil health? Like what sort of, have you measured those sorts of things?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Andy, because in our reports we were meant to consider sustainability in day one. And if you consider sustainability at day one, you could never replace methyl bromide because the gap was too big. In soil health and sustainable systems, when everything's balanced, nothing is at maximum yield or greed or whatever in the system. It's all compromised. So instead of a crop being 120% its yield, which it is with methyl bromide, it's back to 100% how it should be in a normal system. And it's the same with even humans on the earth. It's exactly the same. If we don't live in harmony, we have people that'll greed and they'll take over, and then we'll have the others that phase out. So it's exactly the same in the soil. What we do now as plant pathologists is we try and tip the balance a little bit from the biodiverse environment, just enough to get the yield components going, but not upset the system. That's the major aim of pathology and other scientists worldwide.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've obviously working with something on such a global scale, from a regional to an industry scale all the way through national, global, and dealing with the political aspects of it and the like, let alone dealing with industry. What does leadership look like to you? Like how do you define your own leadership style and like as well?
Yeah, it's a tough question, but the first thing is, and you mightn't be this in every instance, but you've got to be humble. You've got to have trust from the people you deal with. If you lose trust to anyone, you're no longer useful. And you want to be honest and objective. And look, I've been through some rough times with politicians saying, Ian, you're not right. And I'll accept that. We'll then go and look at the science and just put it out there quietly and prove that it's right. And not be too forceful, but dogged. It's a different thing. Being determined objectively and honestly is very different to being a con artist and pushing a barrow that you really can't support. So getting that right is really important for leadership. And my leadership is about the people I deal with. If they're happy, then I'm leading. If I'm happy, I'm not. That's not leadership.
So it's like honest persistence in building trust.
Absolutely,
like that.
absolutely.
Yeah. Terrific. Well, look, I mean, I've honestly, coming from a wine industry background, methyl bromide is something that really hasn't ever been on my radar. So it's fascinating to when you sort of consider actually how big an issue it has been, and so the figures that you're talking about in terms of reducing the impact on the ozone layer, particularly obviously growing up in southern Australia through the 80s and 90s, was very pertinent in that regard. So it's been fascinating talking with you, and thanks for joining us today.
No problems at all, Andy. Look, just in finishing, for the young kids out there that might listen to this, and hear it, UV radiation is one of the biggest global issues we have at the moment, but it's not just about the ozone hole. The impacts of UVB radiation hit every part of our life. They hit the food chain with phytoplankton, they degrade plastics into microplastics that get into shellfish, they increase sunburn and cancers, and the rate of melanomas are going up. We're getting melanomas in the eye due to the UVB we had in the late 1990s, and so health effects are huge. And just through the protocol, they've calculated they're going to avoid 275 million cases of skin cancer by 2100. It's massive, the benefits we've got by having some humble people trying to help the protocol, really. That's what it's about, and being honest and open and doing it. So
which shows how far-reaching, it's like the butterfly effect, I suppose, of it's such a complex issue and going throughout the world.
Absolutely.
And the impact that it has on so many.
And as our young guys are more socially aware, they can jump on early and just learn about it, go to a protocol meeting, everyone can go to it, everyone can be an observer and just jump in a room and say, wow, I want to do something and make a change happen, and that's what we need.
Great.
So thanks for doing the interview, it's great.
Really, thanks, Ian.
Good stuff, buddy.
Now I hope like hell that's actually recorded properly.
Shit, if we go to that again, we're in trouble.
Oh, God.